AFIO Now is presented by Northwest Financial Advisors, where our world revolves around you.
Everyone, this is Jim Hughes from AFIO Now. We are a program of recorded interviews with former intelligence officers and those who write about them. Today, I am delighted to welcome back someone who is both. Barry Broman served in the U.S. Marine Corps in Vietnam and then joined the CIA, serving initially in war-torn Cambodia. He had a series of Southeast Asian tours. He was deputy chief of station twice. He also supervised a major international paramilitary program to support the Cambodian resistance against the Vietnamese invaders. He is a prolific author, very sought after speaker, a photographer, and he's done 9 different documentaries. Barry has written a trilogy, a series of novels that are really quite interesting. And the third book in the trilogy has just come out. It is called The Spy from Golden Valley. I just finished reading it, and it is a great read. Welcome back to AFIO Now.
Thank you for having me, Jim.
Barry, tell us a little bit about some of the principal characters in the book.
Okay, as you said, this is the third in a series, and there are 3 main characters, all based on real people. There's Rick, who is a CIA case officer, and his career follows my own career very closely. Then there's Luke. Luke is a State Department officer. And there's Sasha. Sasha is also a senior CIA officer. And the 3 real people served together in Cambodia. So if I do another book, it will probably be a prequel where these 3 guys meet and then go off on their careers.
Where does most of the action take place?
In this book, we're in Burma. Golden Valley is an upscale neighborhood in Rangoon, not too far from the Great Shwedagon Pagoda. It was founded around 1922 as sort of an exclusive community. And when I was chief of station in Rangoon in 1994-96, the residence I was in Golden Valley.
As you know, the backdrop to this book are the opium wars in Burma. And I must say, when I read the book, I learned a lot about that factual situation. But I think it would be helpful for you to describe to the audience just a little bit more about that, and in particular, the impact that it had on the politics and even the sociology of the region.
Okay, the book takes place around 1994-95. And at that time, Burma was the leading producer of heroin in the world. Heroin, of course, is derived from opium. You take 10 pounds of raw opium, and you can get 1 pound of heroin out of it. So at that time, it was the leading producer. Most of it was coming out of the Shan state of northeastern Burma in an area known widely as the Golden Triangle, which is the confluence of China, Burma, and Laos.
How did this heroin trade impact the politics of the region, particularly Thailand and Burma, but also China?
Well, for many years during the colonial period, and Burma was a colonial colony of the British, opium was a monopoly of the state, in this case, the British. And the French, similarly in Indochina, where opium is grown in the mountains, it was a French monopoly. And in Thailand, it was a royal monopoly. And all of that ended in the 20th century. But the production continued. And with the arrival of heroin in the late 19th century, which made opium, much more lethal, addictive, and sought after, it has continued to climb in importance. In Burma, it should be pointed out that the Burmese are not actually involved in the production. Production comes out of the tribal areas in the north, the northwest, and the northeast, and are controlled largely by Chinese growers. This book actually is inspired by a true story involving a major drug lord and what happens to him.
So Rick's relationship with the Charge d'Affaires, Luke, make his job a lot easier in Rangoon.
Yeah, the relationship between Rick, the CIA officer, and Luke, the State Department officer, is a little bit strange, but not rare, in that they have a very close personal relationship, which makes their professional relationship that much easier. Sometimes there's difficulty on both sides, but in this case, the relationship worked closely, and to have Luke as the charge. Now, in a country where we don't have an ambassador because of bad relations with the host government, the senior diplomat is the charge d'affaires. So in this case, in Burma, Luke is the charge d'affaires. And because of their past history together, serving in Bangkok and in Paris, it works out very well.
Tell the audience a little bit about Rick's father-in-law, Noi, what his role is in the book.
Okay, in the second book, The Spy from Sukhumvit Road, Rick marries a Thai lady whose father is a senior general in the Royal Thai Army, and he's someone that Rick served with back before 75 when Cambodia fell, and they were fighting the Communist Party of Thailand in northeastern Thailand. So this general, whose nickname is Noi, becomes a close personal friend of Rick. So happens that the general has a daughter, and Rick doesn't really know her because she's off in England in finishing school, and later at Cambridge University at Oxford, where she got her law degree, and then returned to Thailand. Rick meets her, they fall in love, and she works directly for the King of Thailand in his many projects, including crop substitution from opium to other legal products. And Noi, who's a 3-star general at the time of the book, works also for the king, and he's kind of the senior, unofficially the senior general in the palace.
So one of the more interesting characters in the book is Jackie. Tell the audience just a little bit about Jackie and his background and his predilection, and what role does he play?
Okay, now Jackie, like most of my characters, is based on a real person. In this case, Jackie is a former Belgian parachute mercenary. He served in the Congo as a sergeant in the Belgian Special Forces paratroops. Drifts off to Asia as a singleton, gets involved with various freedom-fighting organizations, sometimes in Burma with the Karen, sometimes in Laos with the anti-communists, sometimes in Cambodia with the non-communist resistance to the Vietnamese. And he's always wanted to work for the CIA, but the CIA doesn't want him. He's got a checkered background. He's been involved with some bad people. And Rick establishes a friendship with him in Paris, and that carries over to Bangkok. And all of this activity is off the books. The agency doesn't know what Jackie's doing. And in fact, he's doing a lot of things that really help Rick. And in this book, it happens again. Jackie appears. In this case, he becomes a stringer for a French news agency and goes into Burma. And again, he's off the books, helping Rick.
In Rangoon, there is a very interesting colonel that Rick deals with on a regular basis. And he's a colonel in the DDSI, Colonel Zhao Myo. Tell us a little bit about him and what his role was.
Okay. At that time, the U.S. and Burma had very strained relations because there was a military government, non-democratic, unelected in Rangoon. They basically destroyed what was a thriving economy back when the military took power in 1962. And they allowed elections thinking they'd win in 1988, and that they lost badly to Aung San Suu Kyi, the lady known as the Lady, Nobel Prize winner. And as a result of not allowing her to take power, people went into the streets in protest and they were murdered in the hundreds. So relations were strained. The only area in which there was cooperation was in counter-narcotics, because it was both in the interest of the generals and in the U.S. government to cooperate. And they did cooperate in the 80s before the serious fighting broke out. The U.S. gave helicopters to the Burmese for counter-narcotics, and there was a lot of good, positive cooperation. But by the 90s, it was strained, and as I say, only the CIA and the DEA worked in cooperation with the Burmese, and it was very successful. Now, you asked about the colonel. So the colonel is the deputy chief of the military intelligence, which goes by the initials DDSI. And this is a tough bunch of guys. In point of fact, the intelligence community in Burma was led by a fellow who was the leader of the moderates, as opposed to the hardcore right-wing field commanders in the army. And that continues to this day. There was a period of time, 2010, 2011, when free and fair elections were held. The lady won. She joined the government, and things were looking much better. But in 2021, the army, a new bunch, right wing, reasserted themselves, took over the government. The lady's back in prison, and the situation in Burma is very bleak right now.
We know from earlier interviews with Barry that he had a very interesting early involvement in Bangkok in the press corps. And Barry, I understand you were just back in Bangkok for another event. Tell our audience a little bit about the history, but then what were you doing in Bangkok a couple of weeks ago?
Well, first, I was in Bangkok as a 19-year-old photographer for the Associated Press, 1962-63. My dad allowed me to drop out of college for 1 year. So a month or so ago, I got an invitation from the Foreign Correspondents Club of Thailand to come out and sign some copies of my recent books, which I did. And I announced the publication of the latest novel, The Spy from Golden Valley. And I hand-carried 2 suitcases full of books, which I signed and sold. We had a great turnout at the club. When I was in the club, there were about 10 members, all working press, and I was the junior guy. Right now, the Foreign Correspondents Club of Thailand has over 700 members, and only about a small number, relatively small number of them are working press. The rest are businessmen, diplomats, etc., who are allowed to join as associates. Then it was very, very good time. I saw some old friends, one of them, a 92-year-old 4-star general in retirement, forced me to, he insisted that I have dinner with him. He took me out at 92, and he's a character in my novels.
Tell the audience about the man who was the president of the Foreign Correspondents Club when you first joined back in 1962, and how have you and he interacted?
Okay, and this is a fellow, as I say, he was a senior, I don't know if we could call him the president. I don't think we were probably that well organized. But he was the senior guy in the Foreign Correspondents Club because he was the correspondent for the London Sunday Times. His name was Momrachuang Kukrit Pramod. And Kukrit Momrachuang means that his grandfather, great-grandfather, was a king. So he was in the royal family, British educated, really an outstanding guy. So he was the boss in 1962. In 1963, he participated in the making of the film The Ugly American, which was I covered the world premiere in Bangkok in 1963. King and Queen of Thailand were there. Marlon Brando starred, and he was there. And Kurkrit played the prime minister in the film. And 10 years later, or thereabouts, Kurkrit became the prime minister of Thailand. He was a great fellow, and he wrote the foreword for my first book, Old Homes of Bangkok.
Well, the name of the latest book is The Spy from Golden Valley. It is a great read. I recommend it to you all. And I want to thank Barry for coming back on the program again. It sounds like we may have to see you again, Barry, if there's a prequel out there.
Well, that's possible. Right now, I'm working on a photo book of my experiences in Vietnam and Cambodia. But more and more people are suggesting I do the prequel and tell the story of how Luke, Rick, and Sasha got together in the first place. So you may see me again, and thank you very much for having me, Jim.
Good to see you.
AFIO is a small, nonprofit, apolitical, educational organization whose main mission is to help prepare the next generation of intelligence officers to confront the challenges our nation faces in the years ahead. To learn more or support our outreach programs, visit www.afio.org.